All right, this debate is going to focus on the issue of whether or not the use of zero tolerance policy in schools is ethical. Members of the debate include the moderator, myself, Flora Rodriguez, who is from Blythe, California. I've been working as an elementary school teacher in the general education classroom for 5 years. I do not have experience working directly with ABA or BCBAs, but I have worked with many children who have autism in the school setting. The stater for the pro is Courtney Powers Brumfield, who is from Glenwood, West Virginia. She has previous work experience with adults with IDDs in a group home setting. She does not have any experience working directly with BCBAs, but has experience working with one child who has autism in his private home during a previous autism course. Joe Kamen is the stater for the con. He is from Cincinnati, Ohio. He has been working for the past year and a half as an RBT, providing in-home and clinical therapy to individuals with ASD in the area of Orange County, California. The prover for both staters is Olivia Shaw from Indiana. She has 7 years of experience working in the field of applied behavior analysis, primarily in a clinical setting, and has served in a wide variety of positions, including behavior therapist, clinical support staff program coordination, and staff trainer. Her previous experience includes 6 years of teaching in public and private schools and 2 years working in home group settings for adults with disabilities. She currently works beside and with the direction of multiple BCBAs. Rachel McMichael is the attacker for both the pro and the con. She is from Indiana. She has 6 years experience working with students with various disabilities, including ASD in a school setting. She does not have any experience working alongside with BCBAs. The rules for the debate are that each side will have 5 minutes for each original argument and responses. Each side will also have 3 minutes for closing arguments. We are ready to begin.
Okay. So at this point, I go ahead and read.
I don't know if there should be any kind of transition there, but
yeah, I feel like I'm fine with just going ahead and starting. Okay. So the application of zero tolerance policies has deviated significantly from its original intended use as a deterrent for gun and drug possession on school grounds.
Okay, several studies demonstrate that zero tolerance policies have far exceeded the parameters of disciplinary action for misbehavior as severe as gun or drug possession. Losinski, I can't say that word, Ryan, Bond, 2014, and Jones, 2013, cite that many states have enacted additional bans to reduce disruptions, including the use of tobacco, truancy, inappropriate language, threats of violence, and even toy representations of firearms. In turn, there are more potential violations for which a student could find themselves suspended or expelled from school. Some examples of violations incurred due to expansion of zero tolerance policies include a 10-year-old girl discovered a knife in her lunchbox placed there by her mother for cutting an apple. She was expelled, although she immediately handed over the knife to her teacher. This constituted as a possession of weapon and violated the zero tolerance policy. This was reported in the Petersburg Times Educational Intolerance 2001. Another example is an adolescent being expelled for talking to his mother, who was a deployed soldier in Iraq with whom he had not spoken in 30 days, on his cell phone while at school. The teenager was expelled for violations of the rule for cell phone use, which resulted in implementation of zero tolerance. This was from the American Psychological Association Zero Tolerance Task Force, 2008. Just another example is a 6-year-old bringing a plastic knife to his lunch, packed by his grandmother, so that he was able to spread peanut butter. Another example is a 7th grade trading over-the-counter Midol medication while on school grounds. And yet another example of a teenage boy suspended for a terrorism threat due to the creation of a student council election poster that parodied the movie Speed.
On the school level, administrators who have implemented behavior support have seen positive outcomes regarding discipline. At a classroom level, teachers can use many social, emotional curricula and interventions to prevent behaviors. The goal of the policy is to have a system to discourage disruptive behaviors and to keep the learning environment safe for all students and staff. Zero tolerance is generally defined by a school system as a policy that predetermines consequences and punishments regardless of those circumstances.
Federal policy mandated that all schools adopt a zero tolerance policy in order to decrease the amount of violence that children experience in their lives and to increase social control. The federal policy does mandate that the schools comply with the zero tolerance policies. Several legislative actions have spurred schools across the nation to adopt these policies in efforts to increase safety within their districts. These policies were born out of a series of federal drug and weapon regulations enacted under President Reagan in the 1980s and have been used in schools as early as 1989 in response to incidents of drugs, violence, and gang-related activity. The implementation of the policies continued to evolve with the Clinton administration when the Elementary and Secondary Education Act was reauthorized and Congress passed the Gun-Free School Act of 1994, which required that any state receiving funding under the ESEA to implement mandatory one-year expulsion for any student bringing weapons to school and to adopt a zero-tolerance policy on firearms. The GSFA was a pivotal change in the legislation that has forced schools to adopt zero tolerance policies with consequences of lost funding under the ESEA for failure to comply. In the creation of this legislation, Senator Feinstein, a key sponsor of the GFSA, reported to Congress that the schools were losing control of the students and not doing enough to assert control over the student population. The passing of this legislation was an approach to increase social control in a sweeping effort to provide districts with power to increase social control to prevent violence.
When we talk about decreasing violence, we have to keep in mind that most students face difficult challenges every day before they even get out of school or get to school. Often students are more likely to experience particularly traumatic incidents outside of the school environment. According to a report by the National Center of Educational Statistics, students ages 12 through 18 were more likely to be victims of non-fatal serious violent crime, including rape, sexual assault, robbery, and aggravated assault away from school than when they were at school. These challenges can present inappropriate school behaviors. If schools are using the federal funds appropriately, counseling and behavior supports will be put into place to help students with those difficult challenges.
Instead of removing subjectivity from punishment and promoting fairness for students from minority backgrounds, in other words, disability or ethnicity, zero tolerance policies have in fact continued the accelerating trend of high suspension and expulsion rates for these students in particular. Research suggests that suspension and expulsion rates have increased since the implementation of zero tolerance policies. For example, in Chicago Public Schools, one analysis of expulsion rates after the implementation of zero tolerance policies has demonstrated an increase from 81 to 1,000 over a period of 3 years. Furthermore, expulsion and suspension rates have more severely impacted populations of disabled and minority students. In fact, research shows that race, special needs, and socioeconomic backgrounds were the best indicators of whether or not a student would be punished under zero tolerance policies. Fabello et al. 2011 found that minorities and students with disabilities are more likely to be removed from school environments due to disciplinary reasons. Between the years of 2006 and 2007, over 500,000 students with disabilities were excluded from school for violations of school safety policies for 10 days or less, and 75,864 were removed for more than 10, according to Lisinski et al. 2014. And one study of expulsion and suspension rates in Philadelphia schools revealed that of these incidences, 35% were African American, 23% were Latino, 14% white, and 5% Asian. Not only are students of minority and disability more likely to incur violations under zero tolerance policies, they are also vastly overrepresented in the data. Maryland schools reported that while African American students only made up 38% of their school population, they represented 61% of all expulsion and suspensions, while disabled students, only 12% of the school population, account for 20% of these violations. A study by Sabika, 2014, shows that Black students are suspended at rates 2 to 3 times higher than those of other students and are similarly overrepresented in office referrals, expulsion, and corporal punishment. The difference also highlights disparities amongst the types of violations for which students of diverse backgrounds are most likely to be referred. Black students were referred for more subjective offenses, as in disrespect, whereas white students were more likely to be referred for objective offenses, as in smoking or vandalism. Thus, research tends to suggest cultural differences in the application of zero-tolerance policies across school systems.
Okay, according to the research, we show the data making up the cultural differences. However, do we see the percentages of students that make up each race, sex, and ethnicity in the district? For example, in Decatur School District, expulsion records for the past 2 years revealed 46 to 48% of the student body was African American, and that over 82% African Americans were suspended. Of that percentage, most were the same students over and over again. This data can lead to misrepresentation of students being expelled due to race. Based on the behaviors given, fights, bullying, etc., students were suspended regardless of their race, sex, or ethnicity, according to Stater 2004.
Teachers and administrators favor the zero tolerance policy because it sets clear standards for expectations and consequences. They find that it's very effective in maintaining a safe learning environment, according to Sasser 2017. And it also has flexibility, taking into account that legal requirements of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act are honored, meaning that punishments can be modified if necessary for those with IEPs.
Is this my turn? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Safety of students is without question one of the highest responsibilities we can charge to teachers and administrators in school systems. In light of the potential threats to student safety, the failure to remove a dangerous student from a school is a great risk to students and faculty, according to Monaghan and Walker 2012. One primary benefit to the implementation of zero tolerance policies for teachers and administrators is the ability to maintain a safe learning environment through the use of clear standards and expectations, consequences, and the flexibility of these benefits. Research indicates that zero tolerance policies, particularly those created under GFSA, allow local school administrators to modify any disciplinary action for a firearm violation on a case-by-case basis, according to Monaghan and Walker 2012. In terms of moderating disciplinary action related to gun violence, which poses a significant threat to a school safety, school systems can consider the circumstances surrounding an infraction if it is necessary to, for example, to ensure that the legal requirements of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act are honored, according to Monaghan and Walker 2012.
Right. Teachers are obligated to follow zero tolerance policies regardless of disruptive behavior in students with disabilities. Because of this requirement, teachers are required to follow certain consequences, even if the behaviors are the result of how they may have been approached or spoken to by another student or staff member. Teachers often try to figure out they can manage these unique situations and follow these mandated policies, according to Evans and Lester 2012.
The harsher penalties enforced in schools since the 1990s have led to a reinforcing of the school-to-prison pipeline. This nationwide phenomenon in schools criminalizes student misbehaviors, regardless of severity, and pushes these students into the prison systems through draconian punitive consequences. Zero tolerance policies often criminalize student misbehavior regardless of its severity and push students into prison systems through punitive consequences. According to a review of the literature, as in the APA Zero Tolerance Task Force 2008, the implementation of zero tolerance policies have increased school systems' reliance on the use of more severe consequences, and subsequently the use of these policies has resulted in an increase of referrals to the juvenile justice system. Federal compliance and contingencies for funding are largely responsible for encouraging school systems to spend more money on security measures rather than alternative solutions such as anti-bullying, anti-drug programs, social workers, or counselors, according to Jones 2013. Often these violations are for infractions that were once handled within the school system, but now are viewed as more criminalized behavior. The evidence suggests that the number of these referrals to the juvenile justice system are increasing. Studies in Pennsylvania, for example, show that the number of referrals since the implementation of zero tolerance has tripled over a period of 7 years. There were over 21,000 arrests in the state of Florida alone over the 2007-2008 school year. A large proportion of these arrests were for misdemeanor offenses or disorderly conduct, according to the APA Zero Tolerance Task Force 2008. Problematic to these arrests and referrals is that behavior criminalized often represents typical adolescent behaviors, according to Jones 2013. Because of their unique developmental attributes, adolescents are more likely to take greater risks and to reason less adequately about the consequences of their behavior, according to the APA Zero Tolerance Task Force 2008. Thus, an adolescent is more apt to engage in behavior that would violate many zero tolerance policies simply on the basis of their unique developmental profiles. These policies essentially set up the majority of adolescents for failure and increase the likelihood of following a path that leads to criminal behavior. Ultimately, these policies result in criminalization of minor student infractions, including charges that would never be considered criminal if brought against an adult, according to Jones 2013. The increase of these types of referrals based on the reliance of more severe consequences has led to the emergence of the term school to prison pipeline.
The increase of police presence in the schools have decreased the fear of crime and drugs significantly over the past decade, according to Price 2009. Students breaking the school rules are given a dose of reality at a young age by seeing how they will be disciplined when they don't follow the rules of society. This type of discipline allows them a chance to make better choices before they are adults.
The threat of violence against students with guns or other weapons is a concern to students and faculty alike. The enactment of zero tolerance policies has helped to reduce fears of this type of violence and increase feelings of safety within the school climate. With zero tolerance policies in place, students who engage in serious violations that could be potentially dangerous to other students are subject to immediate removal from school grounds. These policies are predicated on the notion that the removal of the disruptive students will result in a safer climate for others, according to Hewing in 2000. And this is one of the fundamental justifications for adherence to such a strict no exceptions rule for school discipline. After the GFSA was enacted, the percentage of students ages 12 to 18 who avoided one or more places at school, citing safety concerns, decreased from 9% to 5% between 1995 and 1999. Also, students who feared attack or harm at school dropped from 9% to 5% during that same time frame, according to Kaufman in 2001. There are some schools that report increased feelings of safety resulting from their use of zero tolerance policies. Henry Foss Senior High School in Tacoma, Washington, implemented a zero tolerance policy for fighting in 1991. After 1 year, a 95% drop in violent behavior on campus and led to a record-breaking freshman enrollment thereafter, with new students indicating safety as their primary reason for enrollment, according to Burke and Hubert in 1996.
A multidisciplinary protocol is put into place at schools to show effectiveness by reducing out-of-school suspensions and shows an increase of graduates each year or each school year by up to 20% overall and decreases felony rates over 50%. This alternative plan allows the schools resources to address the reason for the behaviors and improve the students' education and behavioral outcome, according to Teskey 2011.
There is no evidence to suggest that zero tolerance policies have a positive and preventative effect on student misbehavior. On the contrary, zero tolerance policies and their subsequent removal of students from schools has been shown to predict higher future rates of misbehavior and suspension.
One fundamental assumption regarding zero tolerance policies is that the punishments will deter students from misbehavior, thus improving overall student behavior and discipline, according to the APA Task Force, Zero Tolerance Task Force 2008. However, the data suggests that suspension, expulsion, and increased use of law enforcement in school settings are themselves risk factors for a range of negative academic and life outcomes, as cited in Civica 2014. The defining characteristic of a punitive consequence is the decrease in future occurrence of behavior. Contrarily, school suspension in general appears to predict higher future rates of misbehavior and suspension among students who are suspended, according to the APA Zero Tolerance Task Force 2008. Some negative outcomes of zero tolerance policies include increased likelihood for dropping out, less satisfactory ratings of school climate, and lower school-wide academic achievement, according to Jones 2013. In addition to increased dropout rates, research also indicates increased delinquency and repeat offending for the same or more severe behaviors are effects associated with exclusionary practices and their limited preventative value. Wosinski et al. 2014.
All right, removing the disruptive student is unsafe to everyone involved, including the student. Removal of other students within the classroom is a safer practice and allows for the process of de-escalation to begin sooner.
Zero tolerance policies protect students from their alleged attackers and eliminates contact between the offender and the victim and their siblings on school grounds or transportation to and from school.
In 2001, the state of Florida enacted House Bill 267, which mandated for zero tolerance for victimization. The signing of this bill was an effort to protect victims of any violent crime from any further victimization. Jarrett 2002. In the state of Florida, rates of violent crime, such as sexual assault, had occurred in alarming rates, and the bill grew out of concerns that the state was not doing enough to enforce constitutional guarantees of a safe school environment. Between the school years of 1998 and 1999, 159 rapes and 2,830 sexual harassment incidents were reported across the state, according to Jarrett 2002. Some examples of felonies that the bill applies to include homicide, assault, battery, kidnapping, robbery, and carjacking. The bill orders that schools take action when these felonies are committed in order to protect the victims involved. These actions must separate sorry guys. These actions must separate the attacker from the victim by whatever means necessary. Protect measures may include subjecting the offender to in-school suspension, rearranging class schedules, lunch, recess, and related activities of both victim and offender so that schedules do not coincide, as cited in Jarrett 2002.
I do not see that there are any other states other than Florida mandated with the zero tolerance for victimization of students bill. Do we know if this bill only applies to Florida?
So for my closing arguments, first, the use of zero tolerance policies has changed from its original intended uses. Zero tolerance policies continue to show high trends of school removal from minority students. They serve to strengthen the prison to school pipeline. Zero tolerance policies also have not proven effective in reducing misbehavior, but in fact predict higher rates of deviancy. Finally, instead of using ineffective and often harmful zero tolerance policies, school administration focus on alternative preventative systems, such as school-wide positive behavior supports, or SWPBS.
All right, my pro-stater closing arguments is zero tolerance is a federally mandated policy. Zero tolerance provides the students, teachers, and staff with the reassurance that their safety is being protected by federal laws. Zero tolerance is also favorable amongst teachers and administrators due to the unbiased decision-making on its punishments. It also ensures that victims and their siblings have a no-contact order that will be in place between them and their offender.
Okay, that concludes the debate portion of this presentation. At this time, we will answer questions that have been submitted for the debate. Question number 1. Has anyone in your group witnessed firsthand the use of positive behavior supports or school-wide ABA in order to prevent challenging behaviors that could be the result of discipline via the zero tolerance? Was it helpful for the school? Was it supported by the administration? Did they have data giving the benefits of using these strategies? If you haven't seen this in action, give an example of a scenario in which a specific behavior support could be implemented to prevent or de-escalate certain situations that could lend to zero tolerance discipline. I, Laura Rodriguez, have worked as a teacher in 2 different elementary schools, one in Colorado and one in California. In both of these schools, there was a school-wide positive behavior incentive system. Students could be rewarded with paper tickets for following school and classroom expectations. These tickets could then be used to purchase rewards from teachers. The rewards were up to the teachers, or to be entered into school-wide drawings for prizes. In both schools, students who did not receive an office referral throughout the month would be invited to participate in a special event at the end of the month, such as a popcorn party, a free time celebration, electronics party, etc. Students who did receive an office referral during the month would not be invited to the event. Administration at both schools supported PBIS, and data showed less occurrences of problem behaviors at the school after PBIS was implemented, as compared to before implementation. PBIS requires teachers to actively teach the expectations and rules throughout the year, and to encourage students to follow the expectations. In each school, there were some students who needed more than Tier 1 support in PBIS. Even though they could earn these rewards, some students still struggled with problem behaviors. For these students, Tier 2 PBIS would be implemented. Students would be invited to participate in social skills groups, daily check-ins with adults, and classroom behavior intervention. Tier 3 support was for students who continued to struggle with problem behaviors, even after the implementation of Tier 1 and Tier 2 support. These students received individualized behavior plans and supports, such as being placed on behavior contracts. In both of these schools, there was a significant decrease in problem behaviors throughout the entire school population. According to the PBIS framework, Tier 1 typically works for 75 to 85% of the student population. Tier 2 typically serves 10 to 20% of the student population, and Tier 3 is only needed for about 3 to 5% of the student population. In one of these schools, a student was placed in my class after coming off of expulsion for breaking the zero tolerance policy. It was extremely difficult to connect to this student and to encourage positive behavior, as he felt that no one at the school really cared about him and that he was better off when he was expelled. Turns out that he did not attend school during the time he was expelled. He was a student who needed Tier 3 support. By providing that support and working with him throughout that year, using a behavior contract and PBIS, he began to improve. By the end of the year and throughout the next year, his behavior improved immensely, and he was able to move down to Tier 2 support. He tries harder at school and seems happier when he is in attendance. He still struggles with positive behaviors, but expulsion due to the zero tolerance policy seemed to do more harm than good for this student. Question number 2. Do you feel that there could be a combination of positive behavior support and zero tolerance in schools? I think if we're going to continue using the zero tolerance policy at all, it needs major revamping. The zero tolerance policy was implemented to keep students safe at school from other students who brings weapons or drugs to school. In order to continue to keep students safe, we do need to have a zero tolerance on violence and safety violations. When students bring guns, knives, or drugs to school, we need to look at the facts and determine the student's intention. If it is a real gun, then that student should be impacted by a zero tolerance policy. If it is a water gun that a kindergartner brought for show and tell, they should not be subject to the zero tolerance policy. If a high schooler brings Motrin to school because they have not been feeling well and need to take another one during their lunch hour, that is very different from a child bringing ADHD medicine or marijuana to school and giving it out to their friends or selling it. I think that it would be possible to have a zero tolerance policy on violence, but only if the policy takes students' intentions and circumstances of the event into consideration. Suspension and expulsion can do more harm to students than good. When students are suspended or expelled, they are missing out on valuable education time and could be receiving a message that we do not want them at school, but that it is not important for them to be at school anyway. Positive behavior support system can be very successful in some of these cases and can help these students. whereas zero tolerance policy, as they currently exist, will do more damage than help. And we have come to the end of our debate. I would like to thank all participants for their informative and research-based views on this issue. Thank you to everyone who has tuned into this debate. We truly appreciate your support.